Sean McLaughlin, otherwise known as Jacksepticeye, is one of the biggest and well-known faces on all of YouTube. He started his journey nearly 10 years ago and since then has grown his audience to 28 million and counting subscribers with 15 billion views. Outside of YouTube, he has raised tens of millions of dollars in his yearly charity live stream. He has traveled around the world in a tour. He's one of the founding members of Cloak brand with Markiplier, and he is, of course, the inventor of coffee. So it almost goes without saying that he is often lofted on a pedestal and is seen as a hero or an idol. And although he's expressed he does not like it, he is somebody that is to be looked up to, and some people even call him their hero. But even somebody with grandiose titles like that always comes from somewhere. And Jacksepticeye, with this live tour and with this documentary, aims to show you his humble beginnings, where he came from, and how he got where he is. Now, personally, I myself am a longtime fan of Jacksepticeye. Obviously, I mean, I have his coffee cup right here, and in my background over here, if I can successfully point over there, I have his top of the morning coffee beans as well. It's fucking great. Check it out.
Do it! Just do it!
So I was really looking forward to watching this documentary, and the moment I had the chance, I bought it on the Apple Store. One thing I definitely did not expect going into this documentary, though, is to have the rush of emotions I did, the ups and downs and the roller coaster of feelings that you can have from just watching this documentary. And there are a lot of reasons behind it. I related to certain parts that made me understand Jack deeper and in better ways. More so because it took this figure that so many people, and I will admit even myself, lofted as this idol and really humanized him in a way that makes you feel like not only should you aspire to achieve your goals, but that everybody that has achieved their goals is just a person like you and me. So buckle in, because I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I will admit a lot of them are going to be biased, and I cannot help but talk about how this documentary affected me as a whole. But I would also really like to know how everybody else feels about this. So let's get it rolling. Now, the Jacksepticeye How Did We Get Here comedy live show world tour, do you have 90 minutes, was a tour that happened years ago that unfortunately I was not able to attend. But this documentary is just coming out now, and when it first started, I thought, oh, this is just going to kind of be like a stand-up special that you'd see on Netflix, where you get to see the show that happened on stage. And I would say only about 10% of that is this. And in a lot of ways, I would say that this documentary makes up for the fact that you don't get to see this actual live show in person, because he starts the live show talking about his childhood and where he started, and he takes it all the way to almost the present day of where he is on YouTube with his life and his family and what he has going for him and how he feels about it. Along the way through all the stories that he tells from his childhood to adolescence to adulthood and all the trials and tribulations and struggles and ups and downs and happiness, he also visits these locations, and you get behind the scenes footage from his childhood, and you get pictures, and you get to see him on tour. He's talking with his fans, talking about how his life has changed and been affected by this. Now, for those of you that don't know anything about Sean McLaughlin, and I 100% doubt there's anybody watching this video that doesn't, because otherwise, why the fuck are you here?
Hey! Hey! Get out of here! Go on! Get the hell out of here!
Sean McLaughlin was born and raised in Ireland. And one of my favorite stories that he tells in this is about him growing up with his family and being the youngest sibling of this massive family in this very small and albeit very weird town, and how he feels being the youngest child and being from this poorer family affected him for the better and made him comedic and extroverted and always wanting to cheer people up. You get to see his childhood home, which is now converted into a veterinary clinic. You get to see the church where he was an altar boy, and he tells funny stories about things that happened in this church. And while he's telling the stories on stage, you actually get to see him visiting the location of the church. And not only that, what I really enjoy is when he is on location in all of these places, he's always talking about how strange it is and how weird it is and surreal to be in these locations that he grew up in. That is one of the first places within this documentary that I heavily related to. When I was 18 years old, I moved out of my small town that I grew up in, and I went away for many years, and I met my wife and I got a family, and years later we moved back and bought this house that we are in now. And visiting all of these locations and seeing how things changed, being gone for many years, was very surreal and weird. And when my stepson started going to the school that I went to when I was 11 years old, and now that he's 11 years old. It was so strange walking the halls and seeing the principal that was now his principal, but was once my principal, and talking to him and have him be like, oh no, just call me by my first name. And seeing him have that experience is one of the first moments in this, as you start to see this mask being lifted. Not that Jack has ever had like this public-facing mask that he puts on. As the documentary moves on, he moves to telling us stories about how his family sold that house and moved into these small cabins in the woods, which is the first place that Jacksepticeye started YouTube after 2 failed attempts at college. He talks about how he started YouTube purely out of loneliness and seeking a parasocial relationship, which is something you don't often hear a lot. Whenever you hear about parasocial relationships, it is the viewer having a parasocial relationship with the person they're watching on their screen, tuning in and feeling like the YouTuber is their friend. But Jack, or Sean, I'm gonna go back and forth in names, I always have. He talks about how he was so lonely in this cabin, not having anybody, not having anything, that he seeked out these thousands of friends on the internet by posting his videos on YouTube. And it's a different take than you hear. And when he's talking about the difficult times living in this cabin and doing YouTube, it's also cutting to video of him in that cabin where he first started YouTube, and it's moving him to tears, and it's difficult for him, and it's super emotional. And in that part, I resonated so much with that difficulty of being an adult but not knowing what to do next. I just said that I left my hometown when I was 18, and that's purely because when I dropped out of college, I didn't know what to do with my life. I didn't know where to go. I didn't have any answers. I didn't know what my next step was. So I took the leap to go somewhere else, and he took the leap for YouTube. Seeing how emotional he was and thinking back to my life at that time made me incredibly emotional. And I don't cry at movies or TV shows. Things like that don't get to me. But I got misty-eyed, and I got very close. And I had to pause the documentary and go do something else for like 10 minutes to literally calm down.
You gonna cry? Huh? Little crybaby's gonna cry?
I mean, obviously we know where the story goes from there, because that's when Jack came into the public life and a lot of people started watching him. But he talks about when he moved from the cabin and got his very first apartment with 60,000 subscribers. And then when he eventually moved out of it, he was in the teens of millions subscribers. But he talks about how in that time in his life, even with the massive growing success, he put his nose to the grindstone, and he posted 2 videos a day, and he just worked and worked and worked all day, and he didn't bother with his outside relationships or anything else that was going on, because to him, he was building this community and these friends, and he was using that to fill a hole or a void that he had in himself. And how he believes almost every YouTuber is probably looking for those relationships to fill that void within themselves. And I think not just YouTubers, but a lot of people can relate to that. And at one point in my life, I was also seeking out fame in any capacity I could find it, to fill what I felt like was this hole in myself. Luckily, that's not what I do it for anymore. I mean, I've been doing YouTube for 4 years now, and I don't exactly have the fame, so obviously I'm not really in it for the fame. I love it at this point, more just as a hobby. Before, I had other things in my life that made me happy and content on a day-to-day basis. I was definitely doing it hoping to get famous at least, and I think that most people these days that get on YouTube are. And if you're searching for fame, it is most likely to fill something within yourself. Throughout this documentary, when he talks about his entire life build up until the point he is at now, and you see cuts of him talking with the crew and on the bus and hanging out with his brothers and his mother talking about him, living a life like everybody else, and how he is handling the fact that everybody comes up to him for pictures and the mental pressures and anxiety that he has around all of this. It's very emotional. And on one hand, it is incredibly inspiring to see the growth from somebody from humble beginnings like anybody else in the world to a place that he is now, where he has thousands and thousands of screaming fans all joined together in the crowd, and millions of fans on YouTube. And it's inspiring to see him work so hard and get to where he wants to be, because there are so many people, myself included, that work their ass off daily for the thing they love, hoping that somebody will recognize how much they love it and the effort that they put into it. I believe everybody has something out there, not just YouTube, but music or art or movies or carpentry or welding or anything really. If somebody is doing something like that, then having the validation makes you feel a million times better about what you are doing, and it is so inspiring. But beyond just the inspiring nature of it, it takes this man that so many people have put on a pedestal and called an idol, and it frames him as an everyday person, which he is, and which, granted, many times over the years in many of his videos, he talks about how he does not like that part of YouTube. But it just kind of comes with being a YouTuber with that many subscribers. Is unavoidable. But I feel like this documentary does what almost nothing else can, which is giving you that inside glimpse of his life and making you realize that this is just another human with the same difficulties and the same loneliness and the same wants and desires and needs that any of us have. And as I said before, I have been watching Jack since 2016 when my wife and I met. And since then, it has been nearly a daily occurrence in our house. When he releases a big playthrough like Detroit Become Human or Death Stranding or Resident Evil 7, it is like an event in our house. Every single day when he releases that 1.5, 2 hour episode or whatever, we sit down and we watch it almost like a movie night as a family. This glimpse into his life really changed the perspective that I have on him, and I'm really happy that it did, and I hope that other people get that as well. I doubt that Jack will ever see this video, but if he does, thank you so much, Jack, for all the amazing years of content. You've been there through a lot, you helped me through a lot, but also thank you very much for this documentary and a peek behind the curtain. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Check out my other videos.